Welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. My name is Simon Hodgkins. Today, it's a real pleasure to be joined by Carolyn Crandall. Carolyn, you're very welcome to the show. Let's begin by maybe asking you to give us a little introduction about yourself and the world that you're involved in and this wonderful world and business that you're sort of creating around you. So over to you, Carolyn.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me on your show. And it's been an interesting career and journey. I kind of tripped into it when I was in university and had been going for electrical engineering and computer science, and ended up just taking a assistant position to a VP of marketing in high-tech computer industry. So this was back when people didn't really have a computer on their desk, no less the things we carry around, our laptops that we have with us today. But it was such a fascinating and fast-paced industry that I just kind of got momentum with it. Ended up really loving the sales and marketing, and realized that I love technology, but I did not actually code very well, if I was truthful about it. And I realized that this was a really fun place to be in the marketing and sales side of things, to be able to help translate, those technical speeds and feeds into value and reasons why people need the technology or need what you have to offer. And so I have had really an amazing career working for some of the fastest growing companies in the industry. Cisco during their day, it's 8 years with them, most recently with Attivo Networks, and after a 7-year run, got acquired by SentinelOne for over 600 million. And again, some other really great companies with Riverbed and Seagate, a little spin out called i365 at the time, which was compiled of a few different acquisitions. So my career's really been in high tech infrastructure, networking, storage, security, really deeply over the last. It's always kind of been in my career, but really over the last decade, digging into it. So lots of career experiences and things to talk about. So I'm happy to share life lessons. What I've experienced, what I've learned from it, how it's changed, and it's changed so much in the last year, and it really fuels me to reinvent myself every time. So great to be here and chat about it.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. That's great context. And look, I know you've been involved in some huge acquisitions. I know you were sort of a pivotal role in that sort of IPO journeys as well, with some of those big brands and companies that you mentioned. They are very remarkable stories in their own right. And I'm sure that was a very fast-paced environment at those times, for sure. But let's talk a little bit about what you do today, because I want to bring in the term fractional CMO if I can. The Chief Marketing Officer role and the fractionalization of it, if that's a term. Let's talk a little bit about what it means. Tell me a little bit about Marticulate. Tell me a bit about founding that organization and what a fractional CMO is and how are they used today?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have had Marticulate for 14 years. Usually it's generally just been there to, support some advisory or consulting work that I've done on the side. I mean, you build up credibility and reputation in the industry, and people would periodically just need help, right? In new strategy, direction, fiscal planning. But it wasn't something that they needed all the time. And so traditionally, this has just been more of strategy sessions or maybe some consulting work on the side. And more recently, this term fractional CMO came into play. And quite honestly, I'm coming off of the heels of really just working off of full-time employment for decades and really looking at this going, this is really fun. People think a lot about their superpower and what they do. And I love the brand positioning, category creation, have recently been a deep study of AI and how that's changed the MarTech stack. And so what intrigued me was this fractional CMO concept, where a CMO could come in for either an initial period of time or a periodic engagement or maybe interim, right? If they've got a transition, they can bring in a CMO that can help them. And a lot of times it's the pivot, right? They grew to a certain stage, the CMO that they've had in place has done a really good job, but they don't know how to pivot, right, to the next level. And it was interesting. I was actually just talking to another company yesterday, and their CMO that they had was great, as they would call her a full funnel marketer. Right. She knew how to run the marketing demand gen funnel and engine, but they wanted to be much more of an experiential company. And they wanted to have almost that, we talked about these cult-like relationships that they want to establish with their customers, community societies, building upon each other. And that was their differentiation in the cybersecurity space, because here you have thousands of companies all using the same terms and ideas and all bringing value in their own way. And their way of differentiating it was, the concierge, right? I'm going to a Nordstrom versus a JC Penney or a Saks or whatever. And they wanted to make that pivot, and they didn't feel like the CMO that they had was capable of doing that, right? It just wasn't their experience or their DNA. So that's a great example of where they would bring in a fractional CMO, and they would look around and go, hey, this person has done this work, but maybe, that person is, at the point in their career and their life, they don't want to work full time anymore. Right. Or they want to work in stints and other things. And so it was really a nice way of bringing in people with all this really deep expertise and being able to connect them with businesses that had a new problem that they didn't have the expertise. And it may help them either train and coach the CMO that they have here. It may extend what they're able to do by having a partner to be able to leverage and go a little further deeper in a spike, right? They don't always need it, but during that pivot, they maybe do, or new program they do. And it's really taken a lot of legs. I was really surprised at the CMO community that's out there. Super helpful group. I, again, coming off of it, kind of having this separate business where you just collected collected an engagement, a payment, kind of move forward to, wow, if you start your own business, all these things you have to do. And we can talk about that if you'd like, but it's just a great community of people that have all helped each other know how to get started, know how to help engage with folks, bounce new ideas, especially AI concepts and prompts and other things. And so there is a full-fledged fractional CMO community that is out there that I think is going to stay and only grow over time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the maybe a little bit of pandemic fueling a different way in which we work. I know there's certainly not as many people in offices today as there used to be, that's for sure. We seem to have proven on a global scale that you can do work from pretty much anywhere within reason. But also that businesses are constantly, to be successful, constantly adapting, aren't they? Constantly changing. And being able to leverage that expertise to bring in that in this case CMO expert to help them. You're almost sort of leaning towards leveling up their business, or they've got new goals or horizons, and maybe there's a gap there that they can't address. So having that extra person that can help them achieve that, whether it's short term, medium term, or even longer term, in that fractional environment, I think is a very powerful tool. But I see lots of companies, particularly distributed companies, where they're working maybe not all together in the office all the time anymore, are really benefiting from that new way of working. Do you think this is something that has grown in popularity in more recent times, or is it something we've always done in terms of, you were mentioning consultancy going back 10, 12, 14 years?
Yeah, a long time. So yeah, I mean, and it depends. I mean, the one thing I do see is a lot of folks that, especially in high tech, there's been a huge amount of layoffs. And so a lot of people that have expertise. And so it's driven more people going into the kind of quote unquote fractional CMO area. The piece that I would say for caution is, right, if you're going to do this, you need to make a commitment to it and be more clear. If it's just you're available for consulting, be available for consulting short term. But sometimes, especially with these small startups, they need you for 3 to 6 months on a steady state basis to get to where they need to go. And if all of a sudden 6-8 weeks into the project, you go, hey, I got a full-time job. See you later, I'm gone. It's really hard on them. And so we need to be responsible too. If you want to hang your shingle on that fractional CMO title, that you're committed to it. Otherwise, you're available for a set period of time, and just make sure that your project can be scoped and completed in that period of time. But one of the big areas that I'm seeing fractional CMO is, I'm a new startup. Like, I'm working right now with a company that is pre-shipment, right? So they haven't put anything out. They're trying to build everything from ground up. They have had zero marketing, that single one-page website that you stand up and you're like, well, we exist, but I'm not going to tell you anything yet. So everything all needs to be built out. We're not going to be done in 6 weeks, right? We're going to be going longer, and there's going to be evolution as they learn more about, product fit and market, and changing in messaging and positioning. So it would be irresponsible of me to take this customer as a client and say, I'm going to leave you in 6 weeks. And so be open. I'm not saying don't take consulting business, but, be realistic and maybe still call it consulting or advisory business, or know that you can agree to 5, 10, 20 hours a month, even with a full-time job, and keep it going until the contract ends. So I do think everybody's trying to figure it out, right? Not only the people that are doing it, and there are definitely some full-time committed and extremely talented people in this market. And there's other folks that are trying to do it as a patch between jobs. And so just be fair. And then that way too, those that have a business doing this don't end up getting hurt, because they're like, well, I'm not going to do that fractional because I got burned doing that before, because it is a real business, a real practice. And like I said, I have seen some amazing people out there as fractional CMOs that have helped these startups and helped during transitions and help with, kind of that spot in time work. And it's I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to be here to stay. And we've seen it before. Like, you can't run a company without, a CFO or financial practices, or a CSO for security practices. But a lot of times you don't have that person. So I think that work has just now become more kind of in vogue for marketing too, as marketing has kind of elevated its spot to the boardroom table, right? It's there, it's important, it's strategic. And I think more CEOs are going, we can't have gaps, or can't be putting our best foot forward in marketing. And this is helping them close those gaps.
Yeah, 100%, Carolyn. And I think that seat at the boardroom table, that C-level understanding, that, creating content, getting your brand to the position it needs to be in, resonating with customers, getting top of mind, all the good marketing things that move the dial now with customers, that help to drive revenues, that actually make a difference to the bottom line and the profits, whether it's within home territories or whether it's in international markets. Getting that market right now, particularly in the age of the internet and e-commerce and global business, it's such a critical function now. So it is great. But I want to ask you, and I want to ask you a question about two areas really. You touched on AI. You briefly mentioned AI, and I wanted to ask you about, as a fractional CMO, or as anybody providing services to customers, you need to keep your finger on the pulse. You need to be at the cutting edge. AI, I've heard it termed as many things, the great solution, the end of the world, the junior copywriter, the assistant that you now have that you didn't have before. But the point I'm making is technology is constantly changing. How do you keep your finger on the pulse? What's your learning style? How do you onboard new information? Because obviously people want the new tools. They want people to know what to do in the current environment, not something maybe that we put together 10 years ago. And I don't mean, some marketing fundamentals, of course, transition through time. But the latest tools is becoming a real key player in the marketing tech stack. What are your views on that, Carolyn?
Yeah, no, the pace is crazy. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. Just the rate of innovation is off the charts. And so the good news is there is so much operational inefficiency in everything that we do, that AI is a tremendous efficiency boost, right? And it's interesting, though. I mean, a lot of people look at it for content, and it has its role in content. It is not a unaided, kind of like self-driving cars. They're not ready to go on their own, but there are a lot of tools out there that will make writing more efficient. I have multiple clients trying to keep all of their brand voices and tones, and remembering every piece of information that they've put out is very hard. And so one of the things that I will do is I will load all of their information into a library in the style voice, and try to use that as an editor more than anything. So I have not had a lot of luck in writing. I've tried some email tools. Like, there's some pretty cool tools that are out there. Like, I've been tinkering a little bit with Lavender for scoring my emails, right? So I'll still write them. I'm not at all impressed with how they write them, but to edit it and get me thinking about, well, did I do all the best practices for every email, which sometimes you don't always think about because you're kind of busy thinking about the concept. And so so there are some efficiency tools for things like that, or like, wow, I wrote this really well, but now my brain's kind of tired and I can't think of really good subject lines, or how to turn it into a social media post. And so that expansion has been a really powerful area for folks too. So, content writing expansion, identifying your target customers. There's a ton of tools out there to help be able to do that and then engage with them more. And the reality is if we don't get our arms around this and embrace it, then others will, and we may lose a competitive advantage. So how on earth do you stay on top of this? And I admit myself, I mean, I've dedicated a huge chunk of time doing this, and I've spoken at several events about AI. And I still go on to like the CMO channels and the Slack and look at the AI section, and I'm still at awe at all of the other technology that people are playing with, experimenting with chat GTP prompts that they're writing. And so I plug into that Slack channel like every day to just learn from my peers. And I am making sure that I carve out, and it's several hours a week right now, to just listen and learn. Some of it is my existing vendors. What are they doing? What's their roadmap? Because that short-term game to try to adopt and learn a new tool is really high, especially if your vendor that you already do business with is going to be working and incorporating it. So, for example, we've seen HubSpot come forward with a lot of new innovation and things. So I'm trying to get as much information about what they're doing to go, well, do I really need all of these other tools? Or if somebody has Salesloft or Outreach, do they really need all these new email tools? And Salesforce has got a bunch of things they put in. So it's good to go check with your existing vendors, what they have, what they cover, and where your gaps are. And then just be selective, right? Everybody's got these free trials, and some of them have got plugins or other things. So just, kind of be thoughtful about what it is. Watch the videos first before you get yourself caught up in all these subscriptions. And I would definitely do the month to month. I know it's more expensive, but the rate of innovation is so fast. The last thing you want to do is get yourself locked into hundreds of dollars of commitment, and then find out that, oh, there's something better, or your vendor just incorporated it in. So one of the things I'm trying to do is just do month to month. And I'm like, oh, okay. So if I spend $20-$40 a month and I decide a month later, I'm over it. Or maybe that AI company is over itself, because we have seen some already go out of business that they, started with, their 2 kids, a dog in the garage, and there was just no funding to continue. So just keep your options open before getting yourself locked in. So anyway, and then I'll just say, the Marketing AI Institute is really, that was one of the first places I went and learned a lot. It does cost money to get into their program, but they do, I believe, have a certificate that you can get at the end of it. The Alliance organization has like tons of materials and resources, Slack channels, other things. So just dip in and just take some time. And when those emails come across about new innovation in AI, read them, or participate in them. And then if you really don't have the time, go back to the recording, plug it into ChatGPT, get the summary of it, and you can still learn from that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it brings me nicely onto the next thing I wanted to ask you, Carolyn, which is, I know you also sit on a number of boards and advisory councils, and that can range from everything from capital to helping female tech sort of entrepreneurs and business people and executives in technology. You and I are both also engaged to some degree with the CMO Alliance, or whether it's out in the Santa Clara University setting. But with all that sort of board level, advisory council level work that you do you feel there's a trend at the moment with the type of information and the type of services that people want in this marketing space? Do you have that finger on the pulse of any sort of, what's the questions that people are asking? Do you find yourself giving consistent advice to people, or is it just a complete mix of things due to the rapid pace of development?
Yeah, no, it's pretty consistent, I would say that, and I was just actually on a Alliance for CEOs call, and that happens periodically, and CEOs get on and they talk about problems, challenges they have, and then it's an interesting format. Everybody gets to ask questions, and it's not meant to hammer on the CEO, but it's to take problems that may be common and talk about, how they could potentially understand their business better, and then maybe some solutions to it. And the number one topic that came up was top of funnel. Like, right, how do I keep filling the top of funnel and getting more leads, more momentum? And the challenge that traditional marketing has not worked in their mind. And it is hard because attribution for marketing is hard. And it is something that I think first they're needing to work with their CMOs on market fit, right? Does in their engineering and product management leads, is their brand clearly positioned? Do they know what they stand for? Do they know how they differentiate? Do they know the use cases? Do they know their buyer profiles well enough to be able to really get surgical? Because everything keeps pointing to that people are doing their own research and they're making their minds up on their vendor list before they even come to the vendors. And there's definitely a win in being the first vendor to educate. So it's taking a mind shift with the CEOs right now to go, hey, look, marketing is not just an expense. This is part of building your business. And you can have the greatest, coolest technology in the world. If people don't understand it and you're not matching your message with the right customers and the right language that they want to talk, you're just going to shoot right by. And so there is a lot of discussion right now because of the noise in the industry and the restricted budgets, right? How do you actually get through to your target audience? And when you do get that at bat, how do you put your best foot forward? And that pushes you absolutely back into your positioning, your messaging, your use cases, and the way that you engage with people. And so that is a big topic. AI is clearly a big topic with them going, okay, everybody is telling me for optimization of my processes or maybe co-pilots or other things that I need to be doing. And then my whole area of AI and development. And so AI is another big one. And then the other area in cybersecurity specifically is really around, you see a lot of CISOs going to jail, and potentially talks of fines and other things, and in the push by the SEC for, more focus on cybersecurity, and that you can't ignore it, right? If you know you've got vulnerabilities that could compromise your business and you don't do the right things, you could be personally liable. And that's a pretty daunting thing for CISOs to come up. So a lot of CEOs are also looking at that going, how do I look at this different? Which then creates two sides of it of what is the CEO as a business owner thinking? And then what are all these security vendors going, okay, now that they're thinking about this a little bit more, how do I again differentiate myself from everybody else and make them feel better that what I can provide to them will help give them better visibility, better protection of critical assets, better operational management, maybe better ways of addressing the skill set gaps, the skills shortage that's out there, and using some of this AI and automation. So those are some of the things that I think the conversations and I think what you hopefully are hearing from this is that a CMO's role is not just demand gen. right? And I was actually talking to another person I had worked with actually at Attivo the other day, and he's like, "The reason why I loved working with you," he said, "you didn't just focus on demand gen." He said, "You touched every part of the business, like sales, engineering, product management. Everybody felt the brand presence and the demand gen initiatives that you were running." So as a CMO, I encourage you to kind of lift your head up and make sure that you're spending enough time to think strategically. And are you having that impact? Because it's probably why many CMOs have the shortest. I don't know, CISOs, maybe CMOs are battling it out right now for the shortest lifetime at any company. But you've got to continue to show value and reinvent. And thinking strategically will be a really good guide light to help you get there.
Yeah, I think the strategic thinking is critical because quite often the conversation always seems to default in a lot of cases to demand generation, as you say. Where are the leads? Where are
Yeah.
the leads? But a lot of the time, the strategic elements, assets, campaigns, brand development, investments that need to take place, if they're missing, the leads probably won't convert anyway. The top of funnel stuff won't find its way to the bottom if you neglect those other important areas, right? So it is so
Oh my gosh.
critical, but it is a mistake that I see time and time again.
It's real. Oh my gosh, it's so real. One of the conversations I've had recently is the goal was, and this is again smaller business focus as a customer base, that they wanted to have 30 meetings in a quarter because that was their convert. And you look at it and go, okay, 10 meetings a month, maybe not unpractical, maybe a little aggressive for a startup, but they want to just jump in and all of those things. And I was just trying to break down that process of going, okay, let's talk about the operational piece, right? If you're going to drive demand and your website's terrible, right? What does your website look like? Can you process a lead? Like, let's say I brought you the hottest lead in the planet. Can you process it right now? And processing the website, the lead form, the lead scoring, the lead routing, the engagement afterwards, the sales sequences, like on and on and on. So they don't think about that because it's not their world, which they live in. That there's all this stuff that happens, and you can't just go because you're going to waste. There's so much marketing dollar waste that's out there. If you don't pay enough attention to the operational piece and the engagement piece, then you're going to waste a lot of money. And then going through and thinking about strategically, what is it, right? Are we going to try to do this all digital based? Are we going to do some digital and face to face? And if you do face to face, there's a lot of extra cost. I get that it's great, and maybe you can convert everybody sitting across the table from them, but it's expensive. So you have to have the right balance and mix and other things. And so but yeah, without having all of the right content to back it up, the right processes to back it up, um, it is hard. And that is a piece that's hard for executives and CFOs to understand, that this crazy amount of money that's spent on MarTech is kind of needed in a lot of ways. But I also know we have a lot of bloat a lot of times in our MarTech stack that we really could figure out ways to get rid of a lot. My last full-time role I had, we took $500,000 of MarTech bloat out. And maybe it was, I'm not saying the people that were running it before were bad. I'm just saying that it made sense at that point in time. And now with the evolution of the stack, it no longer made sense. Right. So different options.
Yeah.
And so constantly change that. And
Mm.
and help the CEO and CFO know why you need to do this, right? It's important, and get in front of your contracts. They all have like these renewals and timeframes to get out. So just, be mindful of your dates so you can execute your strategic plan without getting caught into something that you're stuck with for another year or something.
Yeah, it's so true because there's always the next shiny toy to play with. And I think unless you have a policy or a process maybe where you say X amount of times per year, we're going to review that stack, we're going to review those processes, we're going to keep an eye on what works, what doesn't work, we're going to stop using things as well as adopting new things. I think that's a very effective way of looking at it, because otherwise before you know it, as you say, you've wasted $500,000, and you didn't need to.
Yeah.
And that could be better deployed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better deployed. Yeah. And it's, your point about starting early on that is really true. I mean, a lot of us are, getting caught up in the budgeting process at the beginning of a year. And it is another different conversation to have. Like, is marketing an expense organization, or they a sales, organization in their own right, that we are going out and laying the ground for all the sales activity and getting things into opportunity. And so one of the biggest pivots for marketers now is we need to stop talking in leads and MQLs and start talking in pipeline. And if you talk about the pipeline that you need, your starting pipeline, the new pipeline you need to generate, you'll be able to look at and back into, then based upon your conversions, how much pipeline can you drive with the budget you have? And you're going to have a budget mix of programs, people, and tools, and that needs to fit. And so one of the things that I suggest is you get into discussion about pipeline and pipeline multiple. It's like, okay, if you want to take, a $500,000 out of my budget for next year, we can do it, but here's our conversion rates, here's the performance, which means that instead of coming out with a 5x pipeline multiple, you're going to get a 2.5. Right. So if we're all agreeing as a leadership team, we're happy with 2.5, which maybe doesn't position us for the growth we want in the next year over. We're not now arguing I need to do 1 more or 5 more trade shows, right? That's kind of academic. Instead, I'm going, well, what's our business need to run on, right? If we need to feed feed all these salespeople, with opportunities, what's the budget I need to do that? And it gets it a little bit away from you can figure out how to take $500,000 out of your budget. You guys got lots of money to, we can absolutely cut back. That is not a problem, but there's a price, right? And so I definitely encourage folks to change that conversation, and you can include the changes in the MarTech stack and investment inside of that. But in the end, it makes it a much more strategic conversation versus debate about how much how much pain or tightening. And there's a balance too. And there's some great research on this of your balance of program to people, because I've always found one that's gotten out of whack. Like if I have too many people and not enough budget, right, then they kind of step on each other and don't know what to do. And on the reverse, I have so much budget and I don't have enough people that people are getting burned out, right? They're like, I can't do all of this. And then you don't spend the money and you don't, meet the goals either. So, make sure you've got a good balance of, program to people, and separate out the tools, because I think that needs to be looked at separately right now in budgeting as well.
That's great advice, great sage advice there. Thank you for sharing that, Carolyn. And it reminded me, I've been having a lot of conversations recently about that same thing. It's not that leads aren't important, and qualified leads aren't important, but it's not the only conversation that needs to be had. It's part of the conversation. And I've been talking a lot recently about measuring signals and intent,
Mhm.
because often we don't focus enough on the right signals. We chase the lead and we miss the important signals, the customer feedback, what's working, what's not working. And spending a lot of time in that area often ends up producing more of those leads that you need. What
Yeah.
activities can you do that are maybe cost effective, efficient, but actually drive the right signals that are heading in the right direction? And I think too often we maybe overlook that too. But I think also your advice about changing the conversation, looking at the budgets, moving it to a strategic conversation, not just are we not doing that trade show then? Because then you're really in the wrong area of that conversation, aren't you? Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to kind of talk about the buyer's group and the buyer's journey that you touched on a minute ago. I mean, that is so important because it is different now. There is so much focus on a lead and an MQL, and it tags back to one person. And a lot of times when it converts into an opportunity, it's a different person. And then there's different buying groups of things. And so it's really important now, if you're looking for those signals and the attribution of what converted them from one stage to another, is to look at the whole journey, look at the buying groups, look at the velocity, look at the triggers of what's driving. And it's hard to do in traditional marketing programs. I mean, some of the ABM systems like a Demandbase or Sixth Sense have some interesting insights. I've used personally a tool called Imperative, which has been really helpful from everything from that budgetary forecasting to looking at those conversion rates to driving KPIs, and then understanding the view of, well, what did happen? What marketing activity drove that transition? So now I could start to look at the different attribution phases throughout that journey, and I can look at the buyer's circle as well. So looking at it on an account-based level. So they're definitely, again, different tools, different stack of looking at it than maybe before, but there needs to be more focused on that, because trying to just put blankets over everything, there's too much waste. And so you need to get really surgical and know for sure. It's like, wow, that Gartner research paper I had is doing magical things, or it's doing nothing for me. And I don't want to go spend that kind of money again if it's not doing magical things for me. So it really is something that's important to get into that journey, the activities, the engagement, and then see how fast is it. If I miss a step, right, does that end up setting us? And then huge thing is look at loss in the funnel, like opportunity loss, not just loss at the time that we go to the deal, we're doing the final bake off, but where am I losing them? And it's amazing how much pipeline is lost during an opportunity validation stage, which then you can learn from, like, why was it not qualified well enough? Was it not like a good lead? And was there some other factor, right? And maybe it's a factor that means you come back to it. Maybe there was a transition of a CISO or somebody else on the team, but make sure to really have good reasons for loss. And if you are doing like gong recordings or something, go back and study them and find out what happened along the way to lose that pipeline, because we put so much energy into it that to lose it, like at that point in time, is a bad thing. So definitely encourage people to look at that. And some may go, well, that's kind of stepping into the sales lane. It is, but sales and marketing are supposed to be partners, and this is not finger pointing. This is going, maybe we didn't build the right use case, right? And they came thinking it was going to do X and it does Y, right? And so it's a collective thing. And again, it also changes the conversation and puts marketing in a much more strategic role versus, again, just counting the leads. But I gave you 5,000 leads this quarter. Like, well, okay, and I know that 2,500 of them were good. Well, okay, but now if you can track it down further and understand, it's like, hey, all of them were good. None of them in your disqualification process, like in the loss of that, were because the lead wasn't good. It was another factor, which again reinforces that you're giving quality leads over versus, well, I don't know, how did you guys really MQL them anyway? Like it's to now, you had it, it was legit, it was qualified, and if it was lost for a reason other than lead quality.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it reminds me of the amount of touch points maybe that are required today in building that lead, because whether it's top of funnel or whether it's moving somebody through a funnel to becoming from a prospect or a suspect or a prospect to a customer, that whole relationship and the amount of touch points in today's marketing environment seems to be an awful lot higher than it used to be. And obviously there's more channels, there's more technology, there's more noise, there's more messaging. But making sure that you've got the right amount of touch points with the right amount of types of activity to help people move through that decision process, that customer journey, as you mentioned. It takes an awful lot of brain power and thinking to make sure you've got that right. And it's a constant adjustment, isn't it? We're constantly moving the dials and making sure that's right, because it doesn't stay still. You can't just set it and say, well, that's it for this year, everything's going to be great, because it changes so quickly, doesn't it?
It does. Constant, lots of constant evolution and change and all the things that we're doing. So, be fluid, fail fast in the things that you do, and be ready to change, because it is changing. And I think part of it is we just have better tools now to understand and track. But the other thing we didn't really do well, a decade ago, was look at buyers' journeys and buyers' groups. Those things matter. And then the number of touch points based upon, it seems like everybody keeps pointing to like 70% of research is done before they contact the vendor. So is a lot more touch point engagement, that they're doing their own research. And we've been taught as consumers to do that, right? We want to go buy something new, we research it on the internet. Why wouldn't we do that with technology as well for our business? So people are doing their own research. And so you've got to pay a lot of attention to, what is the content they need at different phases in the journey? How does that change over time? And do you understand what your best pieces are? And sometimes it's even interesting. I was reading some research about the different things, and they were saying like ebooks were the #1 downloaded thing. So everybody thinks, hey, ebooks are great. Well, was that really because there was more ebooks put out there than any other form of content? Hmm. And then you look at conversions and you go, well, this research also showed that white papers had better conversions than ebooks did. So your own buyer's journeys will start to tell you which ones actually convert. And maybe an ebook is great at the beginning of the funnel, but as they get into their third, fourth, fifth piece of engagement, you got to give them some meat, to go work with. And anyway, there's just a lot of data available to us. And even the content syndication, other vendors, they will produce some fantastic reports. Look at all this data, right? And over time, AI will come and we're just going to spit it all in there, and it'll give us back magical information. But for now, like with your own eyeballs, look at it and digest it and see, because there's, again, everybody's leveraging the latest innovations to learn more. So leverage it, get smarter, get much more focused. And I wouldn't worry about, hey, if you did 5,000 leads and you're going to go down to 2,500 or something because you're going to be much more ABM focused or target focused. You can't do that without bumping the conversion, right? You got to then say, okay, I'm going to lift my MQL or my other conversions, but take a look at doing marketing differently. I mean, it's not a volume play in most cases. I mean, some industries it is, but for a lot of the enterprise technology, it's really getting surgical and matching your technology with the buyers who need it, and anything else is waste, right? Doesn't matter if somebody, like I got a call earlier today of somebody that was trying to promote something to me, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't need that. And that was a wasted effort because they were trying to sell me something that was completely not relevant for a need that I would have. So,
yeah, makes sense. Well, look, before we run out of time, Carolyn, the other things I want to ask you is about the roadmap. Obviously, on this journey that you're on, what does the next 6 to 12 months look like for you? How do you go about planning in today's world? What's on your horizon, your roadmap? What do you think is going to be keeping you busy in the year ahead?
yeah. Well, right now I've been really pleasantly surprised about, whether you want to call it fractional or advisory or consulting work that I've been doing. There is a lot of demand for support and services, a lot of help with figuring out the fiscal planning for next year, but a lot around positioning, messaging, differentiation, aligning to market fit. So I think just working with a lot of these companies to try to figure that out is going to be keeping me pretty busy for a while. I am definitely going to keep getting deeper and deeper into the AI tools and how I continue to leverage them to get better, stronger with the clients that I'm supporting, and for myself. Where I see things going, I think the tech stack's going to look different in 6 months. It's going to look a lot different in a year, and in 2 years ago, 2 years from now, we're going to go, how did we ever survive? Like with what we had, it's like going back to black and white TVs with a little turn dial on it compared to like our smart TVs that we have now with everything. You're going to look at it and go, wow, I can't believe we tried to market with like, a blunt object before versus surgical precision tools. And so I think a lot is going to change, and I don't want to get left behind on that. I want to know how to be as smart as possible in doing that, and learning on my own and learning from others. So that's probably what my world is going to look a lot like. And then also just, kind of a little bit of a balance of quality of life. We've all worked really hard. I think COVID for most people has made us work harder than we've ever had before, just because we're always on. And so I think taking a step back and really remembering to be social, like get out and go do events and activities and meetups and make sure you're injecting enough, social engagement into your life as well. It's important for balance and perspective, right? So I will try to keep doing that for myself personally too.
I think they're two wonderful things to share because, I mean, in one sense, in today's busy world, a CMO has to put time aside to continually learn, to continually keep their finger on the pulse, to maybe, if you want to be a little bit ahead of the curve or providing the best advice or using the latest tools or understanding where the landscape is moving to, you've got to carve out a bit of time in your busy week, haven't you, to constantly put time into building that knowledge and to understanding the tools and the technologies. And secondly, I think the contrast to that is you've also got to put time in for downtime, for personal time, for those social interactions, because otherwise you can't be as effective. You think you can, but you can't. And I think those two things that you shared are really valuable advice for people. So thank you for bringing those up. Finally, Carolyn, I want to ask you two quick things. Number one is there anything that we haven't touched on, or maybe something that we have touched on that you want to expand on, that you'd like to leave our international audience with today? Any sort of final thoughts? And secondly, and importantly,
Mhm.
if people want to reach out and connect with you, they're listening to this, they've seen the show, they want to reach out and connect and find out more about the work that you do, where's the best place to point people to?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is always a great place to connect. So I welcome people reaching out to me on LinkedIn. You can also go to my website at marticulate.com, and there's a little bit more information about my organization. And please, take a look, and you can reach out to me in that way as well. As far as the anything that we haven't touched on, I know we've touched on it, but AI needs to be a part of everybody's world. It's much like social media. It's come in, it's not going away. You have to figure out how to harness it. So I encourage everybody, not only for themselves, but if they have teams, you will not be able to keep up with the innovation across the board. So have your team members come back, like, have them learn a tool, come back, share it with other folks, but promote innovation. Don't be afraid. I know some companies have said we want to ban AI. It's like, well, that's probably not a very smart decision. But I can see banning, like, don't cut and paste, right? There's hallucinations and other things, and don't cut and paste, but use it as a data point. Use it as a way to be more efficient. Use it as a way for ideation. So definitely make AI a part of your world, because if you want to stay relevant and competitive for your company and for yourself, right? You'll want to know this, because I'm sure that an AI skill set is going to be something that employers are going to be looking for. Especially if they don't have it in their organization and they want it. Having a hire of somebody who has it will help you stand out. So definitely make AI a big part of your life, because it's here to stay. But again, use it responsibly. I mean, you got to be careful of, your work is your own work for copywriting, and then use it ethically and responsibly, because there can be risk of bias and ethical use and other things behind it. So just do the right things, but make it a part of your life and tinker around with it. It's quite fun and fascinating, but also kind of put some guide rails on if you find yourself getting like sucked completely into it, and 5 hours later you're still playing. You might have to remember, oh yeah, I got other work I got to get done, but carve out a few hours a week and learn it, because it's going to be a great asset and tool for us as it continues to kind of stabilize, grow, and extend on what it can do today.
Well, that brings us nicely to the end of our episode today. Thank you to everybody who's been watching or listening to Carolyn and I here on the Global Discussion. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, do everything I need you to do to help support the show. Go and check out all the great things that Carolyn is sharing over on LinkedIn, and check out all the wonderful services and opportunities that she works in. And also, make sure that you join me back here for another discussion with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Carolyn. But thank you, Carolyn, for catching up with me today. I've really enjoyed our discussion. Thanks so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you for having me here. It's been a lot of fun.